Hey everyone, Wargs here. So we're back with another guide video. So I know I mentioned, I think in the Feral Druid guide, that I've been playing a lot more Warrior. That has since changed. I've been back on my bullshit with Survival Hunter again. So here we are, playing Survival Hunter, and though I want to do a guide on it because there's just not a lot of survival content out there. So I'm hoping maybe this helps the people that are curious about the spec. Now, Survival Hunter, even with its recent buffs, is still, I wouldn't say, in the greatest position in terms of Hunter DPS. It is still very much far behind Marksmanship and infinitely far behind Beast Mastery right now, which I think is easily the best spec right now for Hunters in Raid. Mythic Plus, there's arguments, but I still think Beast Mastery is the best, simply because of straight up damage. But I find Survival to be the most fun. Plus, I don't even have a ranged weapon to use on this character for a ranged build anyways. So, yeah, we're strictly playing Survival. Now, I've been putting some work on this character only in the last week or so. So, I've been working on just a few different bits and pieces. As you can see, still running this really bad Trinket. And then, of course, the Season 1 tier piece still, just because I haven't gotten those slots filled out. Everything else is like Veteran Track with a couple of hero pieces that I picked up from doing Mythic Plus. I got lucky with the Gigabank Breaker weapon. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, it's evolving. It's a character that's coming along quite nicely. So, we're going to do a guide video. So, what we're going to talk about are the kind of the main two talent builds that I would generally recommend. Now, there are some flex points that you can use, but if you're looking for something that's just going to kind of be a set and forget type build, then I'm hoping these will be for you. We'll talk about things like your stats, consumables, enchants, gear that you want to target. I do this mainly for only weapons and trinkets because you're going to be locked in, of course, to your 4 tier slots. A lot of specs. Your circlet is going to be really strong for most, if not all, of the tiers. So quite a lot of those slots are already filled out. So now it's just a matter of those ones that are going to be like very specific and most impactful on your DPS. And then we'll kind of do a quick overview of your rotation. Now, again, my guides, if you've never watched one of them before, I aim my guides at beginners. If you're new to Survival, or you're like a BM or a marksmanship player that is wanting to try out Survival, this is the guide that I hope that you will gain the most out of. For those of you that are veteran Survival players, there might be some things that are going to be very useful for you, but for the most part, I don't know if you're going to get exactly what you're seeking out of this, especially if you're looking more advanced tips and tricks. And even the rotation that I'm going to be talking about is going to be very much a simplified, basic rotation that is going to allow people to, again, build their foundation, and then I encourage you to build up on your own from there. Do your own research, look at builds that are being played, play around with rotation, play around with talent, see what works for you. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with talent builds, and we're going to start with a raid build. Now, the raid build in the class tree, there's not as many flex points as I would maybe have liked to have had. This tree is significantly better since they reworked it, but it is still one that does kind of, in some ways, limit options. Keynotes here, obviously, you're going to be getting kill shot for free, but natural mending is very good. Post haste, obviously, very good for breaking roots and giving you a speed boost when you disengage. Death blow is going to be very good. Trank shot, you grab simply because it gets you down the tree. It's actually not all that effective, but it is better than concussive shot, which basically is not used on anything. So, there are some very specific raid abilities that, particularly on trash, that could potentially be dispelled, but really this is just kind of here to fill out the rest of the tree. Wilderness Medicine makes it so that you get more exhilarations and you can use this to help with your pet, but again, pets don't take a ton of damage. And then Scout's Instincts, a new talent which allows you to not get slowed while you're underneath aspect of the cheetah movement. So this would be really good on anything that has suction mechanics. I'm thinking Sprocketmonger. The intermission on Sprocketmonger is going to be another one where this could potentially be very, very useful. Styx Bunk Junker, if you're having to run through trash, you can aspect of the cheetah and won't get slowed on it. Survival of the Fittest now with this talent gives you 2 charges. Of course, muzzle your kick, and then misdirect for on pull, basically. All these talents are useful. Explosive Shot is very much used in this build. It is a very heavily incentivized playstyle in Survival's toolkit. Binding Shot actually does have quite a bit of use to it. There are some boss fights where Binding Shot can potentially be useful. So that's always nice to have. Thinking Gallywix, getting things gathered up. You look at Styx Bunk Junker, getting hyenas gathered up and rooted and stuff like that. So lots of very useful talents here. And then from there, you're kind of just taking things that are just kind of like utility. So Pathfinding gives you a base movement speed increase. Trailblazer is good if you're, running away for a mechanic and have to run back in without a harpoon up. Emergency Salve is good for getting poison and disease effects off of you. Notably, it also affects one specific Mythic Plus affix, which is nice. Unnatural Causes just gives you more dot damage, which there is actually dot damage a lot in this build, so that's nice. And then like Born to Be Wild, just giving you better time on particularly aspect of the Eagle, which is also going to be very useful in this build. Camo you can't use in the middle of a fight, but it is something that you can use. Again, it's kind of the best talent point in order to get to Born to Be Wild and Unnatural Causes, because Binding Shackles does almost nothing as well. So there are a lot of talent points that you just kind of waste on things that you can't really use in raid situations, but that's just kind of the name of the game. Like, use disruptive rounds to get to Binding Shot in this side of the tree. It's not because it's actually good. Can be situationally good on like Styx when you're interrupting the Scrap Masters. You get a little bit of extra focus and stuff like that, but for the most part, you're kind of laughing at yourself. For single target builds, you are playing double cooldown, so Coordinated Assault and Spearhead are both being played. Now, Spearhead's on a 1 minute cooldown, Coordinated Assault's on a 2 minute cooldown. So you generally will do 2 Spearheads for every 1 Coordinated Assault, and you do use these basically together. Some other important changes, they made it so now that Flanking Strike and Butchery cannot be taken at the same time. You have to take one or the other. So in pure single target situations, you'll take Flanking Strike. You can switch to Butchery in situations where you need the AoE damage. So if there's a fight where there is a lot of AoE damage that's coming out and about, you can definitely do that. But Tactical Advantage does play off of both. So in this case, you get Flanking Strike. It's Frenzy Strikes. So Flanking Strike gives you more attack speed, which is not wonderful, but it's good. And then Butchery, of course, giving you the Wildfire Bomb cooldown reduction, which is fantastic for AoE purposes. We are back to running Mongoose Bite, and that's mainly because of how this tier set bonus works and because of how your hero talents work. So we played Raptor Strike all throughout Narrowbar Palace in that tier. Now we're back to playing Mongoose Bite. Now you're not trying to sit here and maximize your crazy amounts of Mongoose Bite windows, because there's actually a way to kind of maintain and get your stacks of Mongoose Fury very quickly through different means. And we'll talk about those here in just a little bit. And then notably, you're not taking Bombardier here. You are taking Relentless Primal Ferocity, which means that you gain additional Tip of the Spear stacks. Now let's talk about Tip of the Spear. So Tip of the Spear was reworked at the beginning of this expansion. So in Dragonflight, Tip of the Spear was basically a buff that you got on yourself, where whenever you would kill command, you'd get a buff that would make your next Raptor Strike or kill command do more damage, and it stacked up to 3 times, and when you used it, it would just burn all the stacks all at once. Now they reworked it now to where it's basically like a charge system. It's kind of like a second resource that you build on. So you have your focus, and then you have your Tip of the Spear charges. Using an ability, almost every ability works with them now. As you can see, it says other spells. So when you Kill Shot, when you Wildfire Bomb, when you Explosive Shot, when you Mongoose Bite, even Butchery and Flanking Strike take advantage of this. You burn 1 charge of it. So a lot of the gameplay now of survival is revolving around getting as many abilities onto Tip of the Spear as possible. And Kill Command is the big way that you actually go through in terms of getting that. I think it's my phone going off here. Hang on. Sorry about that. So yeah, Tip of the Spear is where your gameplay heavily revolves around now. So you want to make sure that you're trying to get as many things boosted by tip of the spear as possible. So a lot of your gameplay now revolves around managing your tip of the spear stacks and managing your focus. So you're now a 2-resource spec, just like things like Windwalker Monk and Rogues are. So you want to manage your, like in this case, it's your focus and tip stacks. You know, Rogues and Monks, it's your energy and chi, energy and combo points, things like that. Overall, this build does also take terms of engagement. Now, this is kind of a flex point. You can take something like sulfur-lined pockets, where when you get your quick shots going off, basically you just kind of randomly get arcane shots going off, and when you get 3 of them, you get a free explosive shot. There's value there. You can also take, I've seen some people take Sikkim, but Kill Command has a much lower emphasis in this build than it does, say, in the Sentinel build. And I've seen people taking Contagious Reagents, which is good for some Council-style fights, but not necessarily stellar. So in terms of engagement, it just kind of makes it the best. Obviously, 10-second cooldown reduction means more mobility, things of that nature, so it's just a good talent to have. Right? Now, you do play Pack Leader in all cases. Now, Sentinel can be played. There are a couple of talents in Sentinel that actually make it really, really strong defensively. One of them is being Don't Look Back. You get a small absorb shield basically every time your Sentinel deals damage. The other one is, I believe it is, yeah, mainly Don't Look Back. Things like Catch Out don't really do much. So this does have better defensive potential, but here, Howl of the Pack Leader, they just recently buffed this in a hotfix setup that was done, I think, a week ago as I record this. So they made it now so that this does just more summons, more damage overall. Now, you can't choose these. Wyvernborn Bear are locked in. Looks are locked in. You can't change the way they look. A lot of hunters are a little bit upset about that customization option. But overall, it's a very passive tree. You don't really think about it that much, but it just does a lot of damage. Now, for choice nodes, for raid purposes, you want to grab Envenom Fangs because you do have Serpent Stings that go out in this build through things like Viper's Venom and Outland Venom. So that is going to be useful there. And then in the other choice node, basically when you get a movement impairing effect removed, you get a little bit extra reduction on disengage, which just means more movement, because Horsehair Tether, not very useful for raid situations. At the bottom, Lead from the Front makes it so that you always will grab your Howl of the Pack Leader, and it makes everything better off with coordinated assault. So again, more coordinated assaults leaning into your higher peak with each of these. Now, these all do different damages here. So Wyvern just makes you and your pet stronger. Boar gives you a little bit of AoE cleave, and then Bear also gives you some like upfront damage, and then Boar gives you upfront with a little bit of damage over time. So it's just a very good tree. Now, that said, if you really like Sentinel, they did make changes now where Sentinel will automatically follow your target. So if your tank is moving it out, it'll move slowly. It's also much bigger, but it doesn't proc as often. So if you really like Sentinel, you like the gameplay that comes from Sentinel, you can use it. It is a little bit of a DPS loss with some small defensive gain, but it is a perfectly viable tree. I'm just going to recommend Pack Leader for all content because that's what does the most damage, frankly. All right. Let's look at the Mythic Plus build, and there's not a lot of changes that come from the Mythic Plus build. Obviously, you see over here where you grab things like Bursting Shot in order to displace enemies. You can also grab Scatter Shot in order to stun them, and you grab Intimidation, which gives you a big stun as well. And then over in the class tree, we are swapping out Outland Venom for Contagious Reagents, and then you take the Killer Companion, Spearhead, and Deadly Duo row, and swap it out for Explosive Experts, Fury of the Eagle, and Ruthless Marauder. So, obviously, Fury of the Eagle, I really like Fury of the Eagle, so good conal damage, gives you a chance to get a tip of the spear stack, and gives you increased haste when you're done with it. You're also trading out terms of engagement to grab Bombardier, because obviously the more bombs you can have, the better in Mythic Plus type situations. And then, of course, you switch out Flanking Strike for Butchery. Are there flex points in this? Potentially you can grab something like Contagious Reagents if you'd like, but again, through Pack Leader, I wouldn't recommend it. If you're playing Sentinel, you could probably take this point and move it over here to Wildfire Arsenal. Just because it gives you more Wildfire Bomb damage. You can also grab things like Sulfur Line Pockets as well on that build. So pretty straightforward. And then again, only big changes you make now is you grab Ursine Fury, just because it gives you more butchery, more flanking strike, which means more butchery in this case means more AoE damage. And then Horsehair Tether makes Binding Shot even better. So again, Sentinel can be used for Mythic Plus builds. You'd grab Sentinel Watch, you'd grab Sideline or Catch Out. It doesn't really matter, that's utility. And then you grab Overwatch because it just basically does, you know, explosive AoE damage, whereas Crescent Steel is really better for raid bosses type situation. So again, I recommend Pack Leader as your hero talent choice, but if you really love Sentinel for whatever particular reason, you can play it. Obviously, with more mobility going on of packs in Mythic Plus, Sentinel potentially does have the ability to fall off, whereas Pack Leader is going to be pretty consistent damage. So you kind of make the choice and you make the decisions that you're going to make on that. So that's it for talent builds. Like I said, they're pretty straightforward here. Main thing is you swap out this for this, and that's really the biggest things that you're doing for those types of builds. All right, let's talk about your stat priority before we go diving into everything else, because it starts to make everything else make more sense. Now, for a long time, survival was like the anti-mastery class. You wanted 0 mastery if you could get it. It literally did not increase your damage. And you wanted all the haste. Like, you wanted to go well into DR levels of haste. That has changed because of the way Tip of the Spear now works, and because of the mastery change, where basically if you're within a certain distance of your pet, both of you gain more damage. Mastery is now good, and haste is way less valuable as a result. It's still good. You still don't want to like go for 0 of it. It's not that bad, but you still want to be able to, particularly if you're playing Sentinel, you don't prioritize haste as much. If you're playing Pack Leader, it's right there with Mastery is like your second best stat overall. And then Crit is your best stat for both hero talent packs. Versatility is one of the stats where if you happen to have an item that has it, it's good to get, but you're not going to go out of your way to chase it. So it is, if you're playing Sentinel, it's Crit Mastery, then Haste. If you're playing Pack Leader, it's Crit Haste, then Mastery. But again, these are very close. All three of these stats are pretty close to each other, with Crit kind of being the one that really stands out. Mastery, Haste, depending on what spec you're playing. So many pieces of gear that you get that are equal eye level with different stats. Like if you get a Crit Mastery versus Crit Haste piece, just sim it and see what's going to end up being better for you. All right. Now let's move on to gear and like best in slot style items. So this is going to go through, again, mostly focus on weapons and trinkets. All right. And in terms of the best possible item, in terms of your weapon, you can be looking at Gigabank Breaker. Crit Mastery, good for, again, good for both specs. Are good for both hero talents, so it's like a universally good pole arm. If you can grab it, obviously Mythic Track requires you doing Mythic 1-Up Bandit, which not a lot of guilds are doing right now. But even the heroic version obviously is going to be quite good, last you quite a while. You can also craft a weapon at this if you want to go to it, like 675 is also going to be a really good one if you don't think you're going to be able to get Myth Track Gigabank Breaker. Out of Mythic Plus, there is one that comes out of a weapon that comes out of Operation Floodgate. And that is the Turbo Tiller, which comes off the third boss of Swamp Face. And again, another Crit Mastery weapon that you can go chase after that is going to be perfectly fine. And then you also happen to get this a gun that's got decent stats for your ranged weapons. So if you happen to collect that as well, you could do that. But yeah, this is another one. If you're only like a dungeon player, you're not going to get super high in raid, but you're going to push like 10 keys. You can try to proc this out of your vault and see if it's going to do better. And then, like I said, crafting weapon is always on the table for survival. All right, let's talk about your circlet. So your circlet, you're going to be using basically all tier. The one that's from the Siren Isle. Now I need to make one small change, and I think I just got to go buy the gem, and that is that you're going to be using... I've got Thunderlords. Instead, you'll use Stormbringers, and then you use Fathom Dwellers and Windsingers. Just because you want to get the stat boost on this. Mastery is good for the spec now, so you want to grab that. And then, of course, Stormbringers gives you every secondary stat, so you want to go grab that. I need to fix that on mine. So, so you will be using that for pretty much the entire tier. All right, let's talk trinkets. And there's 3 of them that I think are really, really strong that you want to go chase. 1 of them out of raid, 2 of them out of dungeons. And then there's one that's like a step below that is really good for raid, but is not very good for Mythic Plus. And I think you kind of know, if you know what we're doing here, it is House of Cards. Mastery obviously being a good stat. Any spec that likes Mastery is going to be chasing House of Cards. 1.5 minute cooldown, so it's a little awkward to use. In terms of pack leader cooldown timings, because it's kind of in between your spearhead and your sentinel, so you just want to kind of line it up with your coordinated assault and just hold it until it's with your coordinated assault. Now if you play sentinel, you get a lot of CDR on your coordinated assault, so it is actually better to use with that, because generally speaking, the CDR that you get on your coordinated assault is going to put you around a 90-second cooldown window on coordinated assault, so this lines up a lot better. But either way, I would just macro this into your coordinated assault, live your life, enjoy yourself. All right. Out of dungeons, there are 2 of them. If you're a Mythic Plus primary player, you probably can guess that it is Signet of the Priory. A 2-minute cooldown, again, lines up perfectly with your coordinated assault. Gives you your highest secondary stat, which generally is going to be crit, and then gives everyone else a little bit of extra crit on top of that. So it's just a really good one, and the more people that have this in your party, the better off you're going to be. And then the other one is going to come out of Floodgate, and that is the Pacemaker. So basically this gives you crit. Obviously we love crit because crit is, generally speaking, your best secondary stat. So this is another good one that you can go farm out of the dungeons. So if you run like Priory and Pacemaker, you're going to be in a really good spot. If you run House of Cards and Priory, it's fine. Double on use is a little weird. If you run House of Cards and Pacemaker, I think you're in a really good position. So just very, very good stuff overall. And then, of course, there is the Eye of Kazan. Now, this is going to be really, really good for raid purposes. It is not great for Mythic Plus purposes because of how quickly you lose the agility out of combat. And there is a lot of downtime in terms of being in and out of combat in Mythic Plus. So if you get this trinket, I would only hold on to it for the purposes of raid. I would combine it with like House of Cards or the Pacemaker and live your best life. But if you get this and then you're running Mythic Plus, this is not going to be a huge trinket for you. So it's just kind of is. All right. There are a couple of delve trinkets that you can go for. There is the Suspicious Energy Drink, which basically gives you mastery as a proc. And then if you're below 35 health and it procs, you gain even more mastery. So again, you like mastery, so the energy drink is going to be a good one. And then you can grab the Mechanocore Amplifier, which gives you your highest secondary stat or your lowest secondary stat, which, I mean, hey, more verse means better defensive, more crit means more damage. Both of those come out of delves, so you have to kind of loot luck those for sure. All right, let's talk about enchants, consumables, all that fun jazz. Now, again, I don't have this character optimized yet. I've only just begun working on it, so I need to continue working on building this out. So for your weapon enchant, you can use 1 or 2. If you're looking more pure single target situations, you can use Council's Guile, which gives you extra crit on the proc. For AoE purposes, you can grab Storm Rider's Fury, which is what I have on my Bank Breaker right now at tier 2. which gives you the haste proc. Now, because there's a lot of AoE situations in the raid, you're probably safer going with Storm Rider's Fury. And if you're playing pack leader, then that haste is going to be a little bit more valuable to you than your crit. So on the cloak and the bracers, you can kind of choose whatever you want. I would go with, generally speaking, with leech, because then you can combine it with your tenacity, or excuse me, your ferocity pet, which we'll talk about that little change here in just a second. And you can just get a lot of leech. Like right now I've got 5.3% leech, and then with the ferocity pet out, it's even more than that. So there's a lot of self-healing built into the survival kit. But if you want to grab something like speed or avoidance, I'm not going to judge you harshly for it. Chest piece, you do want to grab Crystalline Radiance. That is just simply the best enchant, because you want to get the primary stat on it. For your legs, you want to put on the Stormbound Armor Kit, which is going to give you the 930 agility and the nearly 900 stamina. And then for your rings, you want to grab Mastery if you don't have a lot of it, or you could substitute it for a lot more crit and be just fine there on that front. Or you can grab Haste, Simit, but generally speaking, any one of those three are going to be fine. I would say probably Mastery is the safest pick, but then you can grab Crit or Haste if you need it. Consumables, you want to grab your Alchemical Chaos, but Tempered Mastery is not a bad backup option if you're cheap. Of course, you want your Tempered Potion, your Algari Healing Potions for healing yourself in a pinch. Algari Mana Oil, because Haste and Crit, both valuable, so you like those a lot. Belladar's Bounty or the Feast is going to be your best one, gives you a higher secondary stat. For your gems, you want to grab Deadly Onyx. This gives you high mastery, low crit, but again, you can play with your stat weights a little bit and do like high crit, low mastery stats if you're needing a little bit more on the crit side, like I do right now. And then for your primary stat one, you want to grab the Culminating Blasphemite. This gives you 181 primary stat, plus a little bit of critical effect per unique Algari gem color. So anytime you can do more crit, we're going to take it. So that's your other consumables. Let's go talk about pet real quick. So there's a new feature in the War Within for pets where if you are talking to the stable master, who this person's standing on them, you can actually change any of your pets to whatever spec you would like. So if you have like a cunning pet, like I have this raptor or this ram that was a cunning pet for a long time, and I love him a lot. I can, he was a cunning pet. I can now just make him a tenacity or ferocity pet. Now you can only do this at a stable master, so you can't do this on the fly. So for right now, I keep him as ferocity, and then I keep my my bear, who I need to rename, as a cunning pet. And then I have this cat around because he looks cool, but I don't really use him all that much anymore. So I can easily stable him, put in stable, and then just run the bear in the botch. Now again, this requires, if you're playing Beastmaster, you put your second spec here. So I see I keep him as tenacity, and then I have dodge here as my ferocity pet. You kind of pick whatever you need based on the situation. In a raid situation where you have like some shaman or some mages or evokers that are going to handle the hero responsibilities, you can generally just safely pull out your tenacity pet in all situations, because it gives you more HP and another defensive cooldown, which is never a bad thing. And then in Mythic Plus situations, it's more likely you're going to be the person firing off bloodlust or heroism, and so you're going to need to be the guy that brings that ferocity pet along. All right, so let's talk about mainly your opener when it comes to your rotation. Now, this is going to be a very simplified version of the rotation, okay? And we're not going to use much in the way of, like, we're not going to burn hero or anything like that. So what you're going to do is when you go into a boss, you're going to lead, generally speaking, obviously you want to misdirect your tank, and then you're going to lead with Wildfire Bomb into a Raptor Strike to get that Serpent Sting dot going. You're then going to Coordinated Assault, Kill Command to fill up your bar, Spearhead Flanking Strike, Wildfire Bomb again, and then you go into your normal rotation. Now you can see with Mongoose Fury, I'm just generating it passively here. So you want to always keep a bomb on cooldown, things like that. But you can see I'm generating it passively, which means that this is hitting quite hard. So that's kind of what the opener is going to look like. And then really it's just a matter of kill command when you need to focus or get your tip of the spear stacks. There's different ways that you can track that. Keep a bomb on cooldown. Flanking strike on cooldown because it generates tip of the spear stacks for you. And then go from there. In Mythic Plus, you more heavily prioritize bomb and butchery versus that. And then, of course, explosive shot also gets a lot more procs. And then you Fury of the Eagle on cooldown when you don't have full tip of the spear stacks so that you can, if you generate one, even potentially two, you're not over capping on that. So that's kind of the basics on the rotation. And then after that, it's, you know, kill commands so that you can keep your focus up, keep your tip of the spear stacks up. And it is sometimes okay to overcap your focus in order to make sure that you have all of your tip of the spear stacks or a tip of the spear stack up. You know, Raptor Strike and Mongoose Bite, you're only going to really use to make sure that you're always keeping that Serpent Sting dot up. But it is also a good way to just fill the gap. Wildfire Bomb on cooldown, basically. Kill Shot if you can get it. And then Explosive Shot basically on cooldown as well. In AoE, really the only thing that changes is that you're going to be using... is that you use Butchery in anywhere that you would use Flanking Strike. You just basically replace it with Butchery. And then you're going to make sure you're using Bomb a lot more consistently. Now, the thing about Bomb... And let's come over here. Where's the cleave dummies? Here. So the thing about Bomb is that it does have some positional to it. So if I'm standing here, and you can see I've got my 3 nameplates here. I'm standing here and I throw a bomb on this target. As you can see, this target right here completely missed bomb. Now, if I'm standing here and I'm targeting this one and I throw a bomb, all 3 get it. So the one thing about Wildfire Bomb is you want to make sure that when you're angling yourself, you want to make sure that you hit the maximum targets possible and always throw it at the target that's closest to you. So that way you maximize the damage that you're getting out of your Wildfire Bomb. Explosive Shot, you kind of want to try to hit like these targets in the middle. So you do have to do some tag targeting. As you can see, both of these targets got hit with, you know, all 3 targets got hit with Explosive Shot here. So there is some tab targeting and some positional awareness that comes with playing survival at a very high end. But once you get used to kind of the core rotation and your cooldown window management and stuff like that, it actually becomes quite simple. You basically just always make so that tab targets the target closest to you. And some people will play with the... let's see, where's it at? Is it in combat? Yeah, action targeting. It's right here. Basically makes it so that you're dynamically targeting something. That is very suspicious. I would be very mindful of it. But it is something that you can use so that you're always kind of targeting the closest mob to you. But like I said, kind of risky because sometimes it might target the closest mob to you might be like these guys over here, and off you're going, throwing a bomb and pulling an extra pack. So you just have to be very, very mindful of it, but it is something that you can do. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the survival guide video. If you have any questions about the spec, definitely make sure you go throw them down in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the video. For those of you that are interested in following more of my content, I obviously am doing these YouTube videos. I stream on Twitch, definitely on every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm trying to add more Wednesdays to the mix. And then I'm doing some Saturdays, at least one Saturday a month, when on the weekend that I don't have my son. And then, but that's more of a variety day. So like this Saturday, for example, I'm going to be doing Final Fantasy VII Remake, playing that for the very first time for, I'll probably do, 3 hours of that. And then we'll come back and do alt raid that I'm hosting on Saturday. And then maybe some keys in between that or before and after raid. We'll kind of see. Just depends on how I'm feeling. And then I've also got my Patreon that I'm in the midst of revamping. If you wanted to get know more about me personally, I am going to be putting up things like mental health blogs, my dating struggles, just more personal insights about me and my life and the things that bother me and the things that I think are great, things of that nature. But I'm also going to be putting up videos that are going to be behind the paywall of Patreon. So for example, I'm be putting up a season 2 dungeon tier list now that we're about a month or so into the season. What do I think of the dungeons for this season? And then I'll probably reevaluate them at the end of the season as well. So if you're interested in that, Patreon is here. It's been rotating over on that. My X profile is on there. My Blue Sky profile is actually the same as my X profile. So if you want to go search me there, I'm actually way more active on Blue Sky than I am on X these days. So yeah, just if you want to find different ways to support me, we're happy to do that. So until the next video, I hope you stay safe. Hope you enjoy yourself. You're having fun. You keep on gaming. We'll see you in the next video.